Good afternoon. Welcome back to another rendition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. I would like to welcome to the virtual floor, Vanessa Franking. Vanessa, welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
No, it is our pleasure. As we were talking about in the virtual green room, our viewers love light painting. We love everything that has to do with the outdoors, especially night photography. So we're going to be getting our education in light painting today, wherever you're joining us from, morning. But I'm going to kick it over to you, Vanessa. So tell us a little bit about yourself and get started. If you guys do have any questions, you guys know the drill. Get them in. If you want to use the Q&A tab, if you're joining us on Zoom, or if you're watching via Facebook or live stream, you can drop your questions and comments in the comment section there. So welcome, Vanessa. Show is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much for having me. This B&H event space is such a wonderful thing. I've been looking at it since I learned about it through my friend Rachel Jones-Ross. Thank you, Rachel, for pointing me this way to lead this lecture. But there are some incredible presentations that you have with extremely talented professionals, which makes it both a little bit daunting for me as an amateur at everything to lead a presentation, but it's also quite an honor to be here. So thank you very much. As I said, and as the title suggests, getting started with light painting. This is designed for beginners by a beginner. I've only been doing light painting for 2 years. And the way I got started in light painting, my bullets read photography, Burning Man, long exposure, Astro, PhotoPills, Ace hardware. That's basically how I got into light painting. I had been a volunteer at Burning Man for photography on their documentation team since about 2015. And Burning Man is this beautiful target-rich environment in the middle of a blank Nevada desert, where there are art cars covered with neon and lights and bicycles covered with lights and people setting things on fire, including themselves. And it's just a long exposure photographer's dream. It was out there that I got really more interested in just setting my tripod down and watching what happens when light and light cars and lit people and lit bicycles move across the screen and make these beautiful light designs. And not long after that, with Burning Man, I got interested in astrophotography. So taking a workshop with Rachel Jones-Ross, she kept looking at her phone. I said, "What are you looking at?" She said, "PhotoPills." I said, "What's that?" She said, "It's the app that knows everything." And I said, "Well, I'll have to have the app that knows everything." So I bought PhotoPills and learned that they were having a workshop. So I go to the workshop to learn how to work the app, basically, which I still can't do. There's a lot of stuff in it. And I sat on the bus to PhotoPills from the airport with a lady named Donna Eves, who is a light painter, and said that she was there to see Kim and Eric. And I said, "Who are they?" She said, "Well, they're the light painters, of course." And I said, "What's that?" 3 simple questions that kind of redirected my photography life, because I'll talk more about Kim and Eric later, but they really got me started, and they're wonderful. And the rest is, late nights and little sleep. So getting started with light painting, my splash screen here, this is a picture I took. This is a light painting picture. I'll define light painting by example. I'll show you some of the work that I do, and I'll show you some of the work that other people are doing and the styles that are out there. But I'm not real particular on what is and isn't light painting. There are purists out there that only want to use lit by hand kind of things. They don't do flash, or they don't do foreground lighting, or they don't use this kind of tool or that. But I think anything that involves adding light in long exposure photography to either enhance or to create the subject, in my mind, is light painting. And you know it when you see it. This is light painting. This is my husband posing for me during the Neowise comedy phase. This was after astrological twilight, and he's looking at the Neowise comet. So this is Wise Neil looking at Neowise. During COVID, there was very little for us to do besides hang out with each other. We couldn't hang out with other people. So we spent a lot of time going out and camping and doing astro and light painting work. I would get up every morning and watch an Eric and Kim video because they're delightful to watch, and they're very generous with their information. Everything you ever want to know about light painting is hidden in one of their wonderful little videos. But I'd watch a video, would go out and try things. I would make some tools. I bought a lot of tools. And that was how we spent our year of COVID, learning to light paint. And so it wasn't a complete loss, though it was a terrible year in general. Okay, when I first got home from PhotoPills Camp, I went straight to Ace Hardware and I bought these little T8 tubes. This one actually is one of Eric's tubes, but I bought a clear tube. They only had 2 clear T8 tubes because they're kind of getting hard to find. These are the tubes, basically plastic tube that goes over a long fluorescent light bulb tube that would go up in ceilings, and they were there for security in case the bulb broke, the plastic would catch the fragments. They're hard to find now, but if you can find them, that's basically the backbone that you build your light painting toys out of. What I have here is a clear tube with a piece of toilet paper stuck in the end and a flashlight that we happen to have in the house. It wasn't a specialized flashlight, it was just a strong flashlight that was small enough to stick inside the tube and then go outside. The only model I could get to hold still was Mr. Spock cut out. So Mr. Spock and I went outside and played for a while, and it just wasn't working for me. I really wanted the light to look like a white, globe, a circle with the light all the way through, and that wasn't working, and I didn't know why. I would learn later that it's because I was shooting toward the sunset, which makes too much light behind the other light. This light can't compete with that light. So you can get full light through a clear tube, but only if it's really, really dark and the tube is kind of roughed up and the lumens are quite low. These are all lessons that I learned along the way. So my second attempt, I put parchment paper inside that tube and I got a much better result. I'm pretty happy that this was my second attempt at light painting, but I did have very good instruction from Eric and Kim at PhotoPills Camp. But I was still not happy that the light didn't go all the way through the tube. See, the light's quite concentrated at the end where the flashlight is. It doesn't go all the way through the tube. It's still a reasonable way to make a tube, putting parchment paper in a clear tube, but I believe there is a better product available, maybe at Amazon, using the lighting diffuser film, the paper that you use, I guess, in flash photography. I don't do that much flash photography, but that paper is a little thicker and works better. Excuse me. Oh, yes, I've been 2 seconds without coffee. Okay. Then I wanted to try some color. So my third attempt at light painting, my husband and I went out to the Black Rock Desert where they have Burning Man. It's not very far from where I live. And it's a place that's very dark. It's very open. I find it inspirational because of all the creative things I've seen there at Burning Man. And I think of it as my happy place. So if you have a happy place, it helps to go there to get your mind in a creative mode. But really what I want to talk about here is my do-it-yourself colored tube. This is still my favorite tube in the whole world. I made it myself with the most barbaric means. I took a clear tube and put some gaffer's tape on the back and I taped a ribbon to the front. And then I put some sequins inside the tube. I don't know why I did it. I just was making it up, and another ribbon at the top. And this is the best tube in the whole world. Sorry, Eric. This is my tube. If I only get one tube, the zombie apocalypse is coming and I only get one tube, I'm taking that one. It's very forgiving and all kinds of light and all kinds of luminosity of the flashlight. And it's also teal and orange, which are my favorite colors. Okay, so these 3 startup shots, my first 3 attempts at going out light painting by myself, I think, I've shown, of course, the better photos that I got. But each photo represents 60 photos. I go through a lot of digital film. The pros like Eric and Katrina Brown, they can walk into an area and go, okay, you need 35 lumens here for 1.5 seconds. They do lumens in their mind. I don't do that. I start kind of with a process, and actually I'm getting better at it. So actually if I go into a situation, I start closer to the right answer than I used to, but still it takes some hunting and pecking to get exposure just right. You have the background to begin with, which is where you start, and then you have to get the light to fit the background. And so it takes a little bit of hunting and pecking. This Milky Way shot, by the way, is a blend. I will show my first Milky Way shot that wasn't a blend in a moment. And I'm going to suggest for people who have never light painted before that starting either in full dark or in your living room or starting with Astro is a good place to start light painting. I think starting in the blue hour is the hardest way to do it because the blue hour is the hardest thing to manage because it's changing so fast. Okay, another tip that I will give is stay close to home. This is my backyard. So we sat during COVID and went out and practiced. I practiced when my husband was watching television. I would just draw shapes, watch the light change the settings, practice with the light being brighter and dimmer in the flashlight. I also started noticing that I put horns on my head and a funny dress. I put my husband in a, I don't know, hat and a coat, turned him upside down, started messing with scenes that I thought were interesting that are now part of my, I guess, repertoire. I do kind of these fairy scene things in the backyard with the leaves and the reflections. But it's close to home. I would recommend that, not everybody has a pond down the street or nearby, but you have a backyard or you have a living room. Eric even once during COVID, he did a laundry room challenge, telling people, okay, here's a laundry room challenge for the Tube Tribe, which I'll mention again. It's the community of light painters that Eric and Kim have formed. The Tube Tribe were all light painting in their laundry rooms, just for something to do while we're all stuck in our houses. But practice close to home before you try to, go to even before you go to a workshop. And again, this is back out at the Black Rock Desert. This is the first time I took a non-blended Milky Way, and I really haven't edited the Milky Way that well. But I think it's a good and easy place to start light painting because you have your exposure set for the Milky Way. And for me, I think it looks like about 25, maybe 35 millimeters here. That's going to be anywhere between 4 and 6, maybe 8 seconds. You're not going to touch your exposure. That makes it easy for you to concentrate on the painting, because when you're trying to do them all at once, it's like golf. Head up, knees bent, left arm straight, right arm crooked, tongue on top of your mouth, whatever it is. There's a lot of things to do light painting. And when you're doing it in the blue hour and it's changing very fast, I found it frustrating to try to do everything because it's over very quickly. So just start when it's over and learn to work the tools, and then back into the blue hour would be my recommendation. Here I've got probably an 8-second exposure for the Milky Way, and I've just done a 2-second paint. I just turn the light on, boom, 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 turn it off. Everybody stands still. Model doesn't move until the 8 seconds is up. But since he's not being lit, it's not that important. And then you've got, decent light paint without some of the headaches that come with the blue hour. However, the blue hour is magical. This is a shot that I planned, and there are 120 photos from this shoot and maybe 20 good ones. But this was a shot I planned from the moment I saw this dress. A friend photographer in the Tahoe area, Marty Gollery, had bought this dress from a local seamstress named Ann Henry. And he had a woman with this dress flowing down some rocks. It was gorgeous. And I thought, this is the shot I had in my mind. I wanted, a woman walking across the sand dunes toward the sunset with the ocean in the background and the dress whipping up, thinking about taking the light tube and flipping it through the dress. 2 hours to get this shot because people kept coming up asking what we were doing. Then they mark up the sand and we have to reorient the camera. I had a 25-foot dress on and I was operating 2 cameras. So I had to run around the back, change the camera settings as the blue hour was coming. And my husband did the paint, but I got the shot. But it is so hard. It's just very hard to start there. So I would, again, leave this for after you've learned to work all your tools quite well. And even if you can get, remote controls for your camera, you're going to remote control your trigger anyway. You have to, but there are some tools with some cameras that let you change your aperture and things like that. I wasn't using those at the time, so I was running with a 25-foot dress wrapped around myself to do the changes through the blue hour. Just another example of what I do. During our COVID year, we were camping a lot. So here's Dead Horse State Park, beautiful landscape with a light paint, my husband wearing a cowboy hat and a mask. And so this is my memento to 2020. It's kind of what we did for 2020. Another one, I love reflections. And this is a great story of a lady walking her dog on the beach. And I asked her if she was busy after sunset. She said, no. I said, would you come back and don a ball gown and wade out into the water with me? She said, sure. So we have a wonderful photo session, lots of pretty things. I love, I'm a sailor. I've been a sailor for 15, 20 years. I love, any kind of water scene that includes sailboats, things like that. And the reflection's nice. And I wanted to show one where I was waiting to do astro and I got skunked. Look at this weather. It was terrible for stars, but it made pretty light painting. So it's a good spare tool to have if you do astro, because you have something to do while you're waiting. After the blue hour, you're waiting for the stars. You can light paint all the way through. Or if you get out there and the weather's bad, you can still have a nice photo shoot. And my next bit of advice is to make a friend. I made a friend out of Katrina Brown, the redhead Katrina. And we went out one night to do a photo shoot at Bombay Beach. And we were going to meet at an art piece that was up in the town. And she was working with her daughter, the beautiful model, Nina Keller, to do a sunset shot. And as I was driving down, I saw the light was coming in, and I drove down to the beach, and she was coming back, and I said, go, let's stay here. She said, yeah. So we went down to the beach, and she didn't have a tripod. She only had her 80 to 200. So I had to get really far away so that she could get Nina in frame. And I had to leave my camera and try to yell to my husband how to operate it, like grab the camera, move your index finger to change the aperture, move your thumb to change the shutter speed. And she's yelling to Nina, try this one pose. And Nina's a professional. She doesn't need help, but her mom was giving her different ideas of poses. And my husband was trying to work my camera. And we had about, 15 minutes maybe of great light where we just got wonderful, wonderful shots. And it's so much fun with a friend. Another friend is Rachel Jones Ross while we were waiting for astro. And let me say that no lupins were harmed in this photo shoot. I hope. I can't verify, but maybe we stomped on a couple of them. But she donned the dress and posed for me while we waited for the stars to come out. And it's a good co-tool to have with your astro. And then if you wait until the stars come out, you can be rewarded. This is another blend. Both of these are blends. You can get the one shot, but this was the same night I did the Neowise, so I was busy. I took this in blue hour, left the tripod there, and did other shooting of the Neowise Comet, and then went back and left the camera running for the Milky Way and blended them later. And then anytime you have a star trail, you have to blend those. I finally got tired of trying to make my husband come out at night when he didn't want to, so I bought a mannequin, and her name is Tahoe Louise, and we've had such adventures together. I gave her an Instagram account. So if you want to see what's happening with Tahoe Louise, you can look. Examples of different kinds of light painting. Like I said, the first time I ever heard of it was shooting astro. Someone would take a flashlight and try to light the foreground. In fact, this is the first flashlight I bought, the original old Eagle Tac 25 LC2, which is a prized and precious flashlight because they don't make it anymore, and it has a fantastic strobe mode that is wonderful for light painting. So this one's had two lives, one for messing up foregrounds for astro, and two as a light painting tool. Using this for the foregrounds and shooting an astros, it's a skill not many people have. Many people think they have it, but don't, like me. I know I don't have it, but it's hard to do. So I don't really even do that or recommend it. Tube light painting is what I do. And I do some other things. I'm learning other things, but tube light painting is my primary type of light painting. Next, this is Anne Henry, the lady that makes the long dress. And I've decorated her a little bit with light using a fiber optic brush and a blade with two color gels that I got from Light Painting Brushes. They make some wonderful tools. And that's my attempt to try to move toward the last one on the right there, which is, I don't know what to call it. I call it still life light painting. People that just have a studio or a black room and they take their tools and basically make paintings. You could take these things and hang it, and they're just abstract art. They're beautiful. And one of the one I borrowed here was from a guy in Melbourne named Stuart at Light Paint Art. Donna and Paul Eves do this wonderfully. Andrea Boyle, Stephen Knight, they're all wonderful, wonderful. I don't want to call them still life artists, if that's not what they call themselves, but they make these designs on black that are paintings. They're beautiful. Bad examples of light painting: using the torch to light up a scene when someone else is taking a picture, walking around with your headlamp on, or pulling into a parking lot at 1 a.m. Those are all bad examples of light painting. Okay, now I'll stop and talk about Eric and Kim, who may or may not have invented the sport. I call it a sport, but they certainly made it popular to the world. They have lots and lots of free tutorials and videos on their website, and they are also the manufacturers of the best tubes in the world. These are just the ones I have to carry with me to a hotel room. I usually have 10 or 12 tubes in my car. I have to have them. And with the exception of my homemade tube, which I believe was a gift from the light painting gods, their tubes are unmatched. They get color, you get color all the way through. They're sturdy. It takes a really good windstorm to bend them in half, but I've done that too, and they're still usable afterwards. But this photo I took at the PhotoPills Camp I mentioned in 2019. The first time I had ever seen or heard of light painting. And I went to this workshop that the lady on the bus, Donna Eves, told me about. And when I saw that, it was kind of like the Milky Way. The first time I saw the Milky Way in my camera, life changed. It was like, oh my God, you can do that. Same thing when Eric called 1, 2, 3, go. We press the shutter down. We shoot in bulb mode, where that means you keep the camera open the whole time you're doing the light paint. He calls 3, 2, 1, open. I didn't even have a remote shutter. So at the camp, I was holding my shutter down for bulb and then close. And when it was over, I saw this in my camera and I thought, I've got to learn how to do that. That's just so beautiful. But Eric, the consummate professional, he had everything set up. He was telling us to change the kelvins, change the aperture, change the shutter speed. Not really the shutter speed. He keeps a short shutter speed. But in the blue hour, that's changing, 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 changing. And while it's beautiful, and it's certainly what you aspire to, or I aspire to, or many blue light painters aspire to, for me, it would have been easier to start with learning how to get my stupid trigger to work, learning how much light is too much in the tube. So if you're starting out from scratch, I would recommend saving the blue hour until you can have complete facility with your gear. I also want to mention the community that Eric and Kim formed, called the Tube Tribe. All my Tube Tribe people out there, I love you. I think there's probably a few of them on there watching me, pulling for me. It's the most supportive, generous, fun group of people I've ever met, especially in photography, where getting that field of lupins out of someone's mouth, it's like everybody knew it was in Sacramento. Everybody's sending each other emails trying to find out where is that field of lupins. Nobody's going to share a location. But in light painting, I'll see an amazing shot, and I'll write to the person, message them on Instagram and go, wow, that was tremendous. Did you make that tool, or is that something that you were able to buy? They'll send me a video of how they make it. Go to the hardware store, get this. There's a whole lot of going to the hardware store involved in light painting. It's funny for me because I don't really, I go to the hardware store and I go, I want a thing that if you were to want to hang like a broom against the wall, a clamp that would do that, but I don't want a nut. I want ones that I can twist with my fingers. And God love them, they find me the tools. And my husband puts them together for me. But the light painting community is so generous with sharing their information. And I thank you all, Katrina and Dave Wharton and Aurelian and Andy Bentley, and just they teach me how to use Instagram because I'm a dinosaur. And they're just a friendly bunch of people. Without them, I wouldn't have made it through COVID. And now with them, life's just better. Okay, why won't this go forward? Okay, what do you need? You need a camera with manual controls and bulb mode. Bulb mode is the mode that you'll only, usually your camera will find it if you're set in manual mode, and it allows you to stay open as long as you're holding the shutter button. Hold the shutter button with the next tool called the remote trigger, which I will talk about, the only one worth buying. But your camera, you need, as I mentioned, to have complete control of your camera. I would practice many, many times, even for light painting or for astro. Anything you're going to be doing out in the dark, you need to be able to change your settings. You need to be able to replace your batteries. You need to be able to focus. You need to be able to do everything that you want to do with your camera. You need to be able to do it in the dark. You know, go in the laundry room and close the door. Work your camera until you can work it very effectively in the dark. So the gotcha number one is not knowing completely how to operate your camera. There's one thing that I do sometimes and I keep forgetting, but I'll go to manual mode and I'll look and the bulb mode is gone. And I'm like, where's my bulb mode? Why? And it always inevitably happens when it's time to shoot, I'm ready to go and there's no bulb mode. And the reason is because the last time I went and shot, I was shooting in continuous mode. And if the drive mode is in continuous, of course, bulb mode can't work. And I'll forget that. You know, these are just things about your own camera you've got to know. Practice them in the dark before you get out and work with other people. And if you shoot Sony, carry a little roll of gaffer tape everywhere you go so you can cover those silly red lights that light up when you're out at dark and ruin the foregrounds. The next thing, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Okay. The next tool is a remote trigger. I've used about 5 of them. They all work a little bit in one way or the other, but the very best one, which I got at B&H Photo, is on the next page. I will show you about that one. It's probably the one that's the most recommended by most light painters. You need a tripod. Tripods are tripods. Get the one that you like for your life. But if you're going to be doing coastal work, like I love to do the reflections in the water, you're going to be putting the tripod in the water. So either use one there that you can completely clean and take care of, or it will not be badly affected by salt water. And also you want a really good tripod for that, because there's a rogue wave now and then that might come in and knock your camera down, and dropping your camera in salt water is not good. You need a high quality adjustable lumen torch. The Seagull Tack is not available anymore. The one I have 4 of this one. It's called a Night Core. It has an adjustable, rather than knowing click 50 lumens, click 200 lumens, it just has a little wheel that you adjust. And it also has a remote. So if you want to do paints that have, like the one that Eric and Kim did, where you had 2 different paints, turn it on, turn it off, turn it on, turn it off. Now you see it's got a little bit of a delay, so you have to learn to live with that, but it is what it is. I have about 7 or 8 torches of different intensities, different brands. And that's probably your first big investment outside of what you already have. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have a camera. The remote triggers are $40–50, but you can spend a little bit on a good torch, and it's worth it to spend a little bit there. Then light toys and more toys, and of course the most important tool to have is imagination and patience. This is the remote that I use, and Redhead Katrina, I believe, is using this one, and Eric recommends this one. Everybody I know in light painting uses this torch. It's the Yongnu. When I bought mine, I did a chat with one of the guys at B&H to make sure I got the right one. They make a different one. I don't know if it's only the cable that's different, but they have one for Canon, they have one for Nikon, and I believe to get one for Sony, and you need to check with them because I'm old and I forget things. I believe I had to get the one for Nikon and then buy a separate cable to fit into my Sony camera. So just check with them that you've got the right tools for yours. And I bought 4 of them because sometimes I run 3 cameras, and you can program them all to the same channel, and one remote will trigger up to 3 cameras. As I said, I'm ancient and arthritic. This is what it looks like. It's large. So if you're holding this in your hand and trying to also push the button on your flashlight, it's kludgy. I think if you're an electrician like Eric Paré, he's rewired it down to like, a little tiny piece of skin that he can just do this with. I'm not that good, but what I can do is I found a bike glove lying unloved on on a running trail once and brought it home and cut a hole in it. And I put my trigger in there and I can tighten the glove down really well so it's not going anywhere. So all I have to do is make a fist. If I just make a fist, I can hold that down pretty sturdy. And then while I'm making this in a fist, I have these fingers to operate the tube. And that helps me. And even with this wonderful system, which took me a year and a half to come up with, or 2 years or whatever, I still let go of the trigger sometimes. So even with the equipment that you've tested with, be prepared for mistriggering. It just happens a lot. Or your flashlight doesn't get on as fast as you think, or you let go of it just as you get to the end. So like I said, for 10 good photos, I've taken 100. But fortunately, film is cheap. Okay, this is one of those slides they tell you not to do because it's ugly and it's just too much information. But I wanted it to be here for your reference to look back on. For me, light painting was a learned by experience, learned by failure, learned by heavy lifting, trial and error game. But again, I did it during COVID and with my husband and with Redhead Katrina. We, wore masks and kept 6 feet from one another. But I didn't learn this quickly. I learned it. I got some good stuff early on, but I have a whole lot of junk in the middle. But be patient with yourself and just get going and enjoy it. Get out there, pick your comp, pose your model, set up your gear. You heard, the warning call is usually 2, 1, go, or 3, 2, 1, go. And that's to prepare your model to take one last breath and stop breathing and stop blinking and hold still. I'm the worst at it. My husband's much stiller than I am. And Mr. Spock, the cutout, is even still, and Louise is perfectly still. Both of my mannequins are still. But you get your model to be still, do your blink, do your paint, and try to get your exposure so that you can do your paint within 1 to 2 seconds, because any longer than that, your model's going to move. Once your model gets trained, like Nina Keller or Kim Henry the Great, they can stand there all day and not move. So you can take your time and do these wonderful paints. But most people starting out can't really hold still. Just think about it. If you're taking a picture of a person, 150 is short. They have the chance of blinking or moving. Heck, when you're shooting at 1/1000, my friend Perry is going to find a way to blink during that 1/1000th of a second. So it is hard for a model to hold still. So if you can get your paints as fast as possible, it helps the model and you have a nice sharp photo. You trigger the camera to remote to open when you're ready to go, either in bulbed mode or timed mode. And I'll talk about what I think of those 2 things. And then you do your light paint and turn it off. Remember to say off for your model so they can resume breathing. It's a good helper. I did want to come back to using bulb mode with the trigger or using a timed exposure. I think if you are starting out, you definitely want to do a timed exposure, such as I said, with doing the Milky Way, setting a shutter for say 6 seconds or whatever you're going to do for your Milky Way, and then doing your paint for 1 or 2 seconds. That lets you only have to push this one time and forget about it, which I think with Canon and Nikon, I think you can press the remote to start the bulb mode and to stop the bulb mode. But with Sony, you have to hold it the whole time. And that's why I made that little glove, because it's kind of hard to be moving around and holding a button down and starting and stopping a flashlight. It's a little complicated. So using a timed shutter lets you get your exposure set, and then you just push the button once, and then you're only worried about the flashlight. And so I just wanted to point that out again. Okay, this is what it looks like. This is, I don't do video, and a friend of mine, Eric Squires, made this video of us out at Juplaya last year when we were out light painting. And I don't even know how to edit, so it's kind of loud, but this is basically what the process looks like. My husband's calling 2, 1, open. We'll go.
Go.
hate this part. I hate being in front of the camera. Okay, there I'm running off to check the settings. I would totally rather be behind the camera, behind the model. And these are what that looks like. So you saw how bright the flashlight looked because you could see it was still fairly light outdoors, that we were probably in the middle of civil twilight. Yeah. At ISO 100, F10 and F13, I had 2 cameras running, and those were 4 seconds. So we did just a timed exposure and make sure you're finished with the paint in 4 seconds. Or use a remote trigger so you can paint for 2 seconds and turn it off. But you saw he was moving fairly slowly. As it gets darker and you need to make a shorter paint, you have to move, I'm not a good 1 second painter, but a good place to start is to be able to make a circle in 1 second. I can do a circle in 1 second, but then triggering, it's a hard 1 second. So it's better. I usually start with 1.5 seconds or 2 seconds to get a short paint in. Okay, when to shoot. As I said, I'm recommending to people that have never done it before to start here, to start at the end of astronomical or start in your living room, in your backyard at night. It's just easier to go out and try 100 circles. In fact, it takes a long time to learn to paint a circle. And I'll show you how to paint a circle. Basically, this maneuver here, you want to hold your hand in one place, never move your hand. And that's it. A long time to make a perfect circle. You're going to come down higher, you're going to come down lower, you're not going to meet, you're going to overlap. It takes a long time to learn that. So learn that in a controlled environment in the dark. When you're ready for blue hour, and here's back to PhotoPills. I would ask for a show of hands of who's never seen PhotoPills, because if you're not using PhotoPills, stop what you're doing and go get PhotoPills. PhotoPills is the app that knows everything. It will tell you when the sun's coming up, when the sun's coming down, what the azimuth is, when the Milky Way galactic core is visible from this time to that time, at what direction and what elevation. It shows you on a map. This is near where I live, but it'll show you this is a photo, so it's not actually working. It will show you as you move the time where the Milky Way is going, where the moon's going, where the sun's going. And I would spend a little time showing you how to use it, but there's a much better way to learn. It's go to the PhotoPills website, and you can see Rafa the Bard with his cool Spanish accent teach you PhotoPills. It's his product. He's better at teaching it. But this is what we primarily use to determine the blue hour. There's a thing here that says blue hour. I don't really pay much attention to that because it only says I have 10 minutes to play, and you really have a lot more. Especially this was taken, I took the screenshot the other night, June 20th. So in the summertime, you have a long time to play. I start shooting in civil, and most people call that either amateur hour or practice time. But especially in my backyard where I've got trees and it's kind of dark, and I have this magic thing called the 4,000 lumen flashlight. Look at that. I can shoot in the daytime almost with this. I can start in civil. Sometime during nautical is your sweet spot. And then sometimes, astronomical is nice too. And again, I recommend starting in the dark. It's just easier when the light's not changing so rapidly. During the nautical, that's when the light, this is a long nautical. To have 40 minutes of nautical twilight is only happens in the summertime. In North America, where I am, I think you probably have it all, for months at a time. If you're really far north or south, or different places have, the light moves differently. But having 40 minutes to play is nice. So this is a good time to learn blue hour, the summertime, if you're interested in learning blue hour. But notice that the light is changing rapidly. And as it changes, you do have to adjust your settings. And I'll talk about that a little bit more. So also, this is a PhotoPills screenshot from an iPad on the telephone. The thing that you always want to have in your pocket when you're shooting anything at night is the PhotoPills app. and it's on the phone. All these indicators here would run across the top of the screen, and I totally it's $20 or something like that. Recommend, if you don't have PhotoPills, to go get PhotoPills. In addition to telling you everything about what's happening light-wise and astro-wise, it tells you, for example, the rule of 500 for Milky Way is a rule of thumb for how long you can keep your shutter open and not trail Milky Way stars. PhotoPill has an even better chart called spot stars. And for every camera, it has the maximum, every camera at every focal length at every aperture, how many seconds you can keep your shutter open without trailing stars. It also will tell you, it has hyperfocal tables for your camera at 35 millimeters, for example. Your hyperfocal distance is going to be different at f2.8 than it's going to be at f11. And that really matters in shooting light painting, because if you're starting at f11 and you focused at f11, as it gets darker, you start opening up your aperture, your focus will change. And you'll either have to refocus and or do something else. What I do typically is focus at 2.8, and then when I go up, it's not a problem, and I come back down to where I started focus. But all of these things are in the PhotoPills app, plus more information than I've ever thought to wonder about. It's an incredible app. And a wonderful community as well. That's where I met all the light painters. Okay, the small matter of exposure. If you're going to do this during blue hour, the three twilights that I just showed you on that page, civil, nautical, and astronomical, these are notes about those, when you can begin to paint, but it's changes. And then the astronomical is where I recommend starting if you're brand new. I can't say this enough, expose for the background. It's what you do. You expose for the background, or you're just going to have a black background. And if you're doing, you have to consider how long you're going to be painting. If you maybe start with 2 seconds, then you can expose your background for 2 seconds. And then what you do with your light painting is not going to mess up your background. But the whole matter of exposure with light painting is, think of that little triangle that you have, ISO, aperture, and shutter speed. Then put that triangle on a galloping horse, blindfold yourself, and try to juggle knives. And that's basically what light painting exposure is like, that, especially in the blue hour when the ambient light is changing very, very rapidly. You might get a minute's worth of shooting during prime time when the light's just really, really that gorgeous blue and changing before you need to go start making changes, raising your ISO, opening your aperture. You tend to want to keep your shutter speed about the same. That's, like I said, for giving your model a break. You don't want them to have to not breathe for 12 seconds, like some people do, but then those are accommodations you have to make in your exposure. Yeah, keep your paintings short. Other things that can be factors is the weather, like that photo I showed you of on the beach with the fog. You would think that would be kind of a longer exposure because it was very dark and there was no light, but actually the fog kind of reflects back some light. So you just have to, get a sense for your environment and take a lot of test shots and throw a lot of shots away. Okay. Here's some examples of chasing the right light during the blue hour. It's just, it's hard. If you're taking photos and you don't get back to the camera often enough to change the light settings, you get blown out and things like that. So I hate to show only my good work when most of my work is this. For every good shot I have, there's 12 bad ones. And this is another one of those slides. It's really more for your reference about starting near the end of civil twilight, test shooting. I don't know why it is, but often, the test shot's the best shot, but I think that's often because we start at f100. And so the rest of them, as you start getting darker and opening up, start getting noisy. But as it grows darker, you need to readjust everything. And I wanted to mention here, some people have formulas that work for them. I go formulaic when I'm working on something in the scene that I don't want to really work about the camera. Otherwise, you just really need to come back and check the camera. Katrina Brown has a system that works for her. and it's awesome. And she actually, I believe, is teaching light painting workshops in Southern California at Redhead Katrina. Check her out on Instagram and look at her webpage and sign up for her workshops. This is something that really is best taught in person. It's you have to see it, and then get very comfortable and happy with the trial and error. And if you get a friend to play trial and error with, it's even funner. Lessons heard but not learned. Trust me. Wear dark or black clothing. Otherwise, you know, it's hard enough to hide behind the light. But trust me on the bug repellent. Rachel Jones and I nearly got eaten to death by mosquitoes while trying to light paint one night. And mosquitoes are where they are, but if you don't have a mosquito repellent in your light bag, you're in trouble, because they tend to come out in the blue hour and feed on humans. Exposed for the background, I'll say it one more time. In my opinion, do it yourself is great, and I got very lucky with this one. But if you just go ahead and buy yourself a few tubes from Eric at Eric Paré Learning at lightpaintingtubes.com, and I have all these resources on the last page. Your light paints will be more predictable. You'll learn quicker because you're not fighting the tube. When I first started, while I was waiting for my Eric tubes to arrive, and I made those tubes, I had nice predictable results from the magic tube here, but the one that I made myself with parchment paper, it just didn't behave predictably. Of course, I learned more, but having nothing to blame in the light tube is one more variable you can take out if you get one you know that's solid. Get the Yongnuo remote and then start in the dark. Save the blue hour until you can focus, trigger, change batteries, refocus, and operate your torches all without fail or delay in the dark. Then drive to Oregon and start your light painting life. Oregon is a wonderful place for light painting, just like Death Valley and Bristlecone Pine Forest are wonderful for astro. Oregon with that long flat coast for the reflections. I love it. I love it. I can't wait to go back. This was my how to do this stick figure drawing. And here's the next best piece of advice: find a buddy. There I am with Redhead Katrina. We're out painting each other in the Salton Sea. Katrina fell in the Salton Sea that night. It was terrible. And thank goodness her boyfriend Bob got her out, because I wasn't going in that deep. It was disgusting. I think this is the foulest water in the world, but there's beautiful light out there. And then we got stuck in the mud. It was just a fun night. But if you find a buddy to play with, it's always better. Okay, so here are the people that I think I have to mention, not only because if you're interested in light painting, look at their work, but I have to say that these are some of the people in the Tube Tribe and some other people that I believe all really learned from each other. You go on light painting, you see someone whose work that you like, and you text them and say, that's awesome. I'm just going to take some Instagram shots from some of these people to show you how many of them put in multiple shots and videos within their Instagram. I think Dave Wharton is one guy I'll show you. Every single time he makes a post, he has it behind the scenes. And I'm so jealous because he's got a video of what he did. I've got one video of me that someone else took a year ago, and I don't even know how to edit that. But the community of light painting, with its generosity, they'll post things and then you'll basically see how they did it. Also want to include Eric Paré Photo with Kim Henry Dance, the Tube Tribe, and the Light Painting Tubes. The lightpaintingtubes.com is where you buy the tubes. And these two are Instagram accounts curated by Eric. Anybody who posts and tags these, he picks different people to share and show people, and you get more followers and you see what other people are doing. And it has really made a community. That's wonderful. Okay, there are some of the other ones. This is Redhead Katrina. I met her because I looked at this and said, that is my dream feed. I just want to learn to do that so much that I sent her a note. We started talking, found out we had some similar interests. She's a Kirk girl. I'm a Spock girl. In fact, my husband is Mr. Spock, but we don't talk about that. But we're Star Trek freaks, really. and we like some of the same things, and we just have a great time. But she is phenomenal as a all around photographer. She can do it all. And as I said, she speaks lumens. So she walks into a scene and says, this is what we need, this, and she does it right off the bat. I take 20 test shots. But she is teaching. So if you want to learn, look her up and go take one of her workshops. Alonzo in Chicago, he's just amazing, very generous. Every time you see one of these little video things, that means there is a how-to or something, there's a video behind it. I'm sorry this got cut off. I didn't spend enough time in the editing, but Alonzo and Katrina both are very good at doing downtown cityscapes, because a city is hard enough to expose, but then to do a light painting on top of that, it's just magic stuff. Alonzo also has sort of a boudoir photography business where he takes women to in a pole studio where they pose and do things. He's also worked with a lot of professional pole artists who can hold a pose during a light painting. So think about being an aerialist sideways for 3 seconds. It's pretty remarkable stuff. Andrew Bentley, he's very generous. Look, there's nothing the like. This guy pushes the envelope and tries new things all the time. This is a selfie. These are all behind the scenes that he posts with his work, and he often does live streams on YouTube or on Instagram, sorry. And here is Insta Dave Warden. Dave plays with fire. This, I just found this guy recently, and I get up in the morning and see what's Dave up to, because he plays with fire and these cosplay artists that are fantastic. This stuff is otherworldly to me. Stuart in Melbourne, Australia is one of the artists that does what I was talking about, kind of the still life stuff. So he's not working with models here. He's working with dark rooms and architectural things, making just the designs themselves are the subject. And I'm hoping to learn a little bit more about this. It's wonderful. Another couple that does that is Donna and Paul Eves in England. And what is so cool is Paul has made cutouts that he spins to make these spaceships. And of course, I'm a space junkie. They make their little alien stuff. It's very cool. They do a lot of other work. They do beautiful still life kind of work as well, but the spaceships are super fun. Okay, here's what's in my bag and where I get them. Light painting tubes, light painting brushes, some of my flashes, PhotoPills in my pocket. And don't forget to tip your helper. This is a selfie I took, me and my husband, after a long day of light painting. And here are some more resources. So that's all the stuff I've got, unless there are any questions.
Of course, we always have questions.
I stop the share. If I can't, well, I don't know how to stop the share.
Pull that down for you. Okay. Perfect. All right.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for all that information. See, that wasn't so bad, right?
I'm still here. I was nervous.
Still here. Now, well, our first question comes back to the gear question. Hayden, joining us on Facebook, asks if you use neutral density filters, and if so, how often and what capacity?
Neutral density filters are a good way to shoot if you want to shoot in the daytime or start earlier. I don't. Again, it's one more thing to throw onto that galloping horse. I use neutral density or some kind of filters when I'm just shooting a sunset or something, but I don't normally throw that in with my light painting mix. A lot of people do, and it is the way to be able to shoot longer if you want to, make it even darker. But I personally haven't done that. I probably will now that Hayden's asked the question. I'll go play with it. I do have a big backyard.
Well, our favorite trick was the one you showed us in the green room before we went live today with the chapstick. It's just goes to show you that, you never know when or where a tip is going to come from and how it might change your life. Especially you talk about not wanting to carry everything but the kitchen sink around with you, but that's something that you can bring anywhere, everywhere. Tell us about this.
My chapstick. Well, it's actually because it even started before Sony. I have to have chapstick, and if you're out shooting all night, it's a long time to go without chapstick. So I carry chapstick all the time. But if you shoot Sony, Sony does have these little flickering red lights that just become annoying. And with light painting, you also, you just never know when you're going to take, for example, this portrait light, which is a tool from light painting brushes to do that with. But say I want to take this adapter and put it on a water blaster. Okay, it doesn't fit that well. What do I need? I need tape. I'm always asking tape. I told my friend Rachel Jones Ross, if you ever want to get me a great gift, just get me a roll of gaffer's tape. So I have rolled a long piece of gaffer's tape around my chapstick. So whenever I'm out shooting, if I need to stop that nasty little red light, I just tear a piece off and put it over the red light. Or if I need to tear it off and put it on someone else's camera, I'm probably going to go do that. And I usually have a length of it long enough to cover the back of a tube. So like this, if you're shooting, especially when you're shooting really dark and you don't want the light reflecting back on you, it's good. So this helps hide the painter by having the black for you. It helps you hide the painter. And having this little piece of gaffer's tape always ready makes me able to adapt the tube very quickly.
Well, I'm glad you pointed that out, because I was just going to ask about, if it was something with cutting down on reflection, or I'm guessing it's just to control the light spill. It's kind of just like a
control the light spill, but it also allows this is one of those, everything happens by happy accident. This was a tube that I ordered and got damaged in shipment. So I wrote to Eric's folks and they go, oh, we're so sorry. And they sent me out brand new ones right away. But basically this tube was broken in half. So I used a lot of tape to put it back together, but it had a big ugly lump in it and it's still kind of flexible. So I put a couple of long pieces of black tape along the back to make it more sturdy. Now, I do that a lot on like a bright white tube. In fact, Eric sells his tubes with or without the black stripe. But with a holographic tube, which is what this is, you typically don't want to do that because you have one color this way and another color this way. So it's like wasting half of the tube to permanently put a black thing on it. But this one I did for stability. But then when my husband was painting me one night, he noticed that this was all black and he took the black side up the front of my whole person and then the lit part down the back. And that started a whole style and a whole different thing that we're doing, because the whole tube goes up the front of me with nothing but these colors, just a little bit of foreground light and colors. And then you see the tube shape itself when it's reflected on the other side. So blacking out half your tube is a very, very useful tool. What I normally do, if I can find it, so I have all these, is you just take a spare T8 tube, cover it half with black, and then cut it down the middle. Then you can take it off and put it on one tube from one tube to the next. I have that here. I also do it with stripes. So if you want stripes sometimes and not other times, you just make a little sleeve like this out of a cut plain tube, and you can put it on your, move it from tube to tube.
Interesting. Well, Vanessa, I want to thank you again. It was super informative. You broke it down for us beginners to light painting. The great thing about this is you guys can all watch this again whenever you like. We do have it archived on live stream and on Facebook. There's a lot of information there, a lot of great resources. And Vanessa, you did it with style and grace and the typical B&H fashion. So thank you for that.
So much. I appreciate it.
Well, Vanessa,
honored. Thank you.
Again, thank you for coming on. No, it is our pleasure. Look, we love, this is what we do, free education for the masses, and we bring on the best in the game so that we can help everybody else out there achieve the best in their game. So I want to thank you again. A lot of great resources. So if you did miss anything, feel free to watch a replay of this, take some screen grabs, and check Vanessa out on Instagram. But that's all we have for today. Thank you for tuning into another rendition of the B&H Virtual Event Space. We'll catch you on next time.